How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of Movie Talk. I'm Matt. We are talking about a movie I am super excited for. I don't know if I'm as excited as Connor at the moment, though. Where did you get that?
Don't worry about it.
Were you a part of Order 66? Did you take that from a clone trooper? But yes, today we are talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, because we have hit the 20-year anniversary of this movie, which is absolutely insane to say out loud. I remember seeing this movie back in theaters back in 2005. I was pretty young, but I still enjoyed every second of it. But yeah, talk a little bit about your thoughts on this movie. Were you a fan of it back in the day? I mean, I know we're both massive Star Wars fans, but did you see this in theaters, and like how much did you rewatch it as a kid?
I definitely saw this in theaters. I mean, I think this was the movie that actually got me into Star Wars, because I remember when was it, Episode 1 and 2, that was like 99 and 02, so I was 1 and 3 at the time, so
Yeah.
So I definitely, I saw the flashing colors, but outside of that, I was kind of like, it was all right. But then I saw Episode 3 in theaters because my dad just needed to spend time with us, and he took us out to go see the movie. I instantly fell in love with it, and yeah, I've been a Star Wars fan of the original 6 since.
Yes,
so.
no, it's crazy. My brother's birthday is in May, so I just remember my brother turning 10 in 2005. We went to go see this movie, and now he's just about to go turn 30, and so we went and saw it together, and it's weird how much time can fly by. So without further ado, let's check out that trailer.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Jedi.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings.
That's treason.
We are at war, Anakin.
Very dangerous putting them together. I don't think the boy can handle it. I don't trust him.
I need your help, son. I'm appointing you to be my personal representative on the Jedi Council.
You are on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
What? Obi-Wan and the Council don't trust me.
Learn to know the dark side of the Force, and you will achieve a power greater than any Jedi.
You're under arrest, Chancellor.
Are you threatening me, Master Jedi? Every single Jedi is now an enemy of the Republic. Do what must be done. Do not hesitate. Show no mercy.
Who could have done this?
Twisted by the dark side, young Skywalker has become.
I feel so helpless.
You were the chosen one!
By the way, I know the movie came out 20 years ago, but huge spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about everything that happens in this movie in great detail. All right, back to the review. Kicking us off with our first positive, I think right out the gate, the first positive I can say about this movie is the opening sequence.
Hands down.
It is still amazing, and seeing it in theaters, I mean, they just knew what they were doing with that sequence. And now what I can say where I'm like, I have kind of small issues with it when I think about the prequels overall, it's just I wanted more of that. I wanted the Clone Wars in the live action movies. We ended up getting a great cartoon show that I absolutely love, so I'm okay with it now, but I remember at the time thinking to myself, wow, this should be the entirety of this movie almost, or it should have been the entirety of the last movie if the Clone Wars had started earlier, because the sequence of seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin going back and forth, having great chemistry with each other, seeing them take down Grievous, take down droids, take down everything was so exciting. And I wish we got more of that in this movie before they ended up separating and we get the whole plot of the movie, which again, we'll get into it, and it's still great, but this sequence just encapsulates what the Clone Wars is so well, and Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship so well. There's even that one great deleted scene that I wish was in the movie of Anakin and Obi-Wan being like, and Anakin's like, no, I don't want to do that move, and then Obi-Wan's like, and Anakin's like, oh, I like that one. And they're like communicating with each other because they've been with each other on so many missions at this point. They don't have to talk to each other. They just have little like sly moves that they do with their hands or whatever to signal each other what they should do in battle. I mean, those little things are just so cool. I just wish that scene was
we
in the
communicate, so.
Yeah, that is how. Yeah, during Connor's points, I'll be like, that means I gotta wrap up. I need to talk now.
And sometimes when he does this, I don't know what this means, but I haven't cracked it yet. So anyway, yeah, I agree with you on this, on the point of where that opening scene, it felt like, how do we say it? It felt like a movie that George Lucas wanted to make.
I'm sure you also know this as well. The original cut of that opening scene is like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah. It literally is its own movie. And they had to cut it way down because obviously it didn't fit the runtime. The extended scenes of that and the deleted scenes of that are insane. And some of them genuinely aren't great. I'll be honest, there's a couple of them that are like, okay, yeah, I get why you cut that.
What I love about the movie is, like, go off of the whole opening scene, is, again, one of the best quotes I heard is, like, it feels like Episode 3 was what George Lucas wanted to tell for a prequel story. Now, granted, he did have a lot of say, I assume he's had a lot of say in the original trilogy, considering he wrote all of them, but it definitely felt like somebody went up to him and just said, all right, skip the flubber, skip all the talky parts, and just give the people what they want. They want intergalactic space fighting.
Yeah.
And that they not only did he do that, it was epic.
Yes.
Especially, it's like, now granted, we've gotten to know these characters up into 2 movies now, up to this point. So
Most of them.
I was gonna say, we got our boy Ooby Nooby Dooby. We have our friend Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Ewan McGregor, and Anakin, played by Hayden Christensen, who, again, like you said, they have great chemistry.
They do.
So for the majority, it was like a half hour of the first movie.
Yeah, it's
or
got to be
20
around like 30 minutes at most.
give or take.
Yeah.
So we'll see that. So with that said, they pretty much carry that whole thing. There's no intercut into what's going on like the planet below or elsewhere. It's them going from fighting in space, crashing into the ship, fighting Dooku, saving the Chancellor, spoiler, Palpatine, and and then meet up with Grievous and then crashing the ship. Again, it was so well paced, and that will lead into my one of my negatives, but we'll get to that in just a short bit. So.
Totally. And actually, that opening scene genuinely has another one of my positives that I had to just put by itself other than the opening scene and just talk about how great it is. It's Anakin killing Dooku. That scene is masterful. The silence after Anakin cuts off Dooku's head, which, I mean, at the time, this was actually the first PG-13 Star Wars movie. All of them have been PG up to that point.
Really?
Yep. So this was the first one that kind of had the liberties of doing things that were a little bit more intense, honestly. And I remember being pretty young and my dad being like, you sure I'm going to let you see this? And being like, yes, please, please. And then being like, all right, fine.
Yeah, nowadays, kids are seeing PG-13 movies when they got people getting chopped in half.
It's
all the
true.
time.
I mean, every Marvel movie is PG-13 nowadays.
I'm pretty sure someone got decapitated in one of those Marvel movies once. I think it was Doctor Strange they did that.
Yeah, yep, they totally did. I know.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's Doctor Strange.
But the silence after Anakin kills Dooku is just it's loud. You hear it. You're like, oh my god, it's so quiet. And then in that quick moment, you have the Ian McDiarmid, who is amazing in this movie, and I want to get back to here in a second. Slightly being the Emperor a little bit and like edging Anakin on, being like, yeah, exactly. And you can hear the Emperor in it. It's kind of become a joke at this point, saying, "Do it." It has. But you listen to the line, and like it doesn't sound like the Chancellor anymore. It sounds like the Emperor, and it's such a
Anakin.
Yeah.
Kill it.
Exactly.
Kill him now. Then he's like, do it.
Exactly. You get that moment, and it's so well done, in my opinion. It's like, oh my gosh, wait, that's actually like effective. And then you have I'm gonna call him the Emperor now because he said do it, but you have the Chancellor then afterwards asking, like, kind of again, like starting to
Real quickly, I sorry to interrupt, but there's also another interesting detail about that scene is that at one point, the Chancellor actually kind of encourages Anakin to leave Obi-Wan behind.
Exactly.
Because he's like pinned down, but Anakin's so loyal to Obi-Wan at this point.
Yeah.
He's like, no, we gotta save him. He's like, leave it, we'll never make it.
It sounds just like the Emperor. And again, like going back to going right back to what I was saying.
Yes.
He's grooming Anakin to be Darth Vader, basically. And so you get those little moments, even with the Chancellor bringing up Anakin's mom again. Remember how you felt about your mom and the Sand People? Like that line, and then instantly you hear Anakin think about the Sand People because you hear the laughing in the background, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. And it's so well done. That moment is probably could be my favorite moment in the entirety of the movie. It's just so effective because you've never seen a Jedi kill like that before. And it really does. It's upsetting, and Obi-Wan doesn't see it.
Another cool little detail is that that's kind of like, maybe this is just completely unintentional, but I kind of like the little touch. He has both a blue and a red lightsaber. When he's, I guess,
Exactly.
in a
Yep.
weird way,
No.
it's kind of like a symbolism of him bound.
100% is. 100% is.
That very well could be reading too much into it, but in my head canon, symbolism.
No, I think it's 1,000% symbolism. I think everything that's on frame had to have had at least 8 conversations. And I think one of those is
agree.
that, the fact that, all right, well, let's have a red and a blue. And you even have them mixing at some point because the way he has the lightsabers to Dooku's head, it's just a very masterfully done scene that I always love watching. Jumping back to something I wanted to talk about, which is genuinely the biggest positive I have for this whole movie, is Ian McDiarmid. This is his movie. He rocks in this movie. He has the one moment, and we'll get into it when we get to some negatives, the lightsaber battle with Mace Windu, sadly. It's just not great. I love it. It's just not great at the end of the day. But
I get what you're saying.
how Ian McDiarmid slowly turns Anakin to the dark side, first bringing up Padme. And then you get probably the best scene in the movie when Anakin and the Chancellor are at like the weird concert
it was like
water
an
thing.
opera, like-
Yeah, and you learn the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, which again has become a joke now, so it's kind of hard to say, but it's such an effective scene, and it perfectly intrigues Anakin enough to be like, oh, the dark side. Wait, this is kind of intriguing. And the way George wrote Anakin's slow fall in this movie is actually amazing and is kind of underappreciated about this movie because you slowly start to see the Emperor doing things behind the scenes, pulling the strings, and then the Jedi Council not sure what to do and not acting appropriately, and Anakin being stuck in the middle of it, not sure what to do. And then you get that moment where the Mace Windu is going to kill the Emperor or kill the Chancellor, and Anakin's like, no, I need him. I need him to save Padme. Padme's going to die, and that works in that moment. Even though that moment itself is a little fast, for sure, it's still the slow descent. You believe it. I believe Anakin's like, all right, I'm done with the Jedi at this point. I mean, it's just really masterfully done.
So one thing that I also kind of found interesting, and throughout the whole trilogy, and this movie kind of solidified it even more so, is that a lot of outside influence really pushed Anakin to the dark side. Outside of the Emperor himself, Mace Windu treated him like, the Jedi Council kind of treated him like that. The only person who actually was, respectful to him was Obi-Wan. And even then, he kind of still leaned towards them. He had to respect their commands and all that stuff.
But even so, Ian McDiarmid's character, the Chancellor, is making the Jedi Council kind of do this because he's like, hey, Anakin, I want you on the council. And then Anakin goes to the council and says that. And then the council puts him down a peg and says, all right, we'll put you on it, but now you're not a master. Now Anakin's upset, but the Chancellor asked Anakin to be there. Now the Jedi Council is worried about the Chancellor, and the Chancellor knows all of this, and so now he knows that they're going to ask Anakin to spy on him. He's setting up everything for Anakin to be evil, and he's doing it all so methodically behind the scenes, and it's decades of planning. I just think it's really well done.
The Emperor is like the most patient person in the
Ever.
entire galaxy.
Ever.
Like, oh my,
Yeah.
I feel like he must have like sensed it when he was probably like Anakin's age. Because the character of Anakin is only like 19 or 20 or something. like that.
Yeah, around there. Yeah,
He's like relatively young at that point. So
yeah.
But yeah, I will say, even though this is kind of a negative I'm going to talk about, but it's also kind of also a mix with a positive, is that the story, if you really look at on surface level, it is kind of corny dialogue,
Yeah.
quotable in a sense, but sometimes for the wrong reasons. Me personally, I I always quote, "This is where the fun begins," or "Hello there."
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I was about to
which-
say hello there.
Oh god, I got a funny story about Obi-Wan in a bit. We'll add to the bonus section. But yeah, I will say, like, overall, if you really look at the story of just all three movies, or specifically just this one alone, there was a lot of detail that I felt like if somebody who actually knew how to write, I love George Lucas's work. I love the original 6 Star Wars movies.
Oh,
The
yeah.
new era is a little hit or miss for me.
Totally.
But he definitely needed someone to kind of look over the story and be like, okay, good layout. Let's polish this dialogue because this is first draft crap right here.
Yeah.
I was like, so I will say again, it's masterful how he did it. I will say even with the original trilogy, granted, with the original trilogy, he only wrote the first one, and a lot of the actors pretty much bullied him to write a
Yeah.
normal
Harrison
dialogue.
Ford. Well, he was a kid. He had nothing. He wasn't George Lucas as we know him. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of people during the prequels probably wanted to go up to George and maybe say something or two to him, but it's George Lucas. You don't just do that.
Well-
when George was 22 and making the first Star Wars and a kid, yeah, you're Harrison Ford. You're above the food chain than George Lucas. You go tell him that, like, hey, this dialogue's bad. You know what I mean? I do think if he had some form of rebuttal on set of just like, hey, that's not great, maybe we'll try this, or maybe the actors trying to just do some of their own dialogue. Maybe George was just against it. Maybe he was like, nope, that's my dialogue, you're saying it the way I want you to say it. And, you got to respect the director's vision to an extent, but you also have to realize that maybe, sometimes you don't have the best idea on set, and sometimes letting things flow through other people can be a smart way to get a great scene done, but, it's George Lucas. You want to respect George's idea. So it's so tough. At the end of the day, George's world building is the best there's ever been in filmmaking, in my opinion.
And the only closest I would say to that is maybe the Lord of the Rings franchise.
Yeah, but even still, what I will say about Lord of the Rings, they're books. You don't have the books of Star Wars. This came from his brain. You know what I mean? The
That is
world
true.
building of Star Wars is insane. It's not a comic book. It's not an intellectual property. It wasn't. It was just an original script, which is an insane thing to think about nowadays because the only thing that makes money is intellectual properties, IPs, Mario, Barbie, Minecraft. You know what I mean?
That's the reason why I don't go back to my theater.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be watching movie Sinners, and I'm going to randomly hear someone yell,
Chicken jockey. but George Lucas's world building and his stories, second to none. His dialogue and his character development can be a little bit rough sometimes. And if you look at the story of the prequels, genuinely probably one of the most interesting stories ever told. I know that's a bold thing to say, but if you look at the fall of Vader, the fall of the Republic, how the Jedi Council didn't quite see all this was growing out from underneath them, it's really interesting. But is it executed to that way? It really isn't.
There is one of my favorite lines in the movie is kind of you talk about the whole fall of the Republic, and the line I think of is what Padme says is,
Yep.
This is
This is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause.
Which I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is kind of scary how this reflects modern society.
But yeah, look, watching the movie back, Ian McDermott's performance and Ian McDermott, he's the main character of this movie. It's his movie, and he shines throughout this movie, and I love it because of that.
I will think too. Another thing what I like too. One of my pros I want to talk about is, well, even though a lot of people might find this questionable, but I gotta say, like, aside from Ian McDermott, Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen were great in this movie. And
Yeah.
Anakin, I know Ewan, a lot of people are going to agree with me on that, but Hayden, his delivery might have been questionable, but if you really look at it, he's an angsty, I guess you could say teenager in this
Yeah.
case, who is just conflicted. Some delivery could have been better, most certainly. But with that said, though, his chemistry with Anakin, with Obi-Wan was
Yeah.
good. And he's how he just seems like he's just a confused kid at the end of the day who happened to have, let's be honest, if it was Qui-Gon was his mentor, none of this probably would have happened.
No.
Obi-Wan was kind of thrust into that.
I mean, we go back to Duel of the Fates. Why is it called Duel of the Fates? It was Anakin's fate. Whoever Darth Maul killed, the other person was going to train Anakin. If it was Qui-Gon, more of a fatherly figure, it might have worked out well, and Anakin might have been that chosen one the prophecy said. If it's Obi-Wan, like what happened, it ends up being a brotherhood. And you don't respect a brotherhood like a fatherhood. You know what I
That's
mean?
true. I don't respect my brothers at all.
Exactly. So, and it just didn't go well. And so, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You look at the story of the prequels and you're like, this is insane. Like the Duel of the Fates and how it affected Revenge of the Sith and all this amazing stuff. But would you know that watching the movie? You wouldn't. You kind of have to really dig deep and look into what other people say about it to sort of realize what exactly George is doing with these movies, which is why I want to go just to my final point. This isn't a positive or a negative. What I want to talk about is nostalgia, because nostalgia can blind you from realizing that maybe a movie isn't so great, but you like it, and that's a perfectly okay thing to realize.
I love a lot of bad movies.
I love a lot of
part of my friends.
I love a lot of bad movies too. The Wachowskis Speed Racer movie I love so much. One of my absolute favorite movies of all time.
Guilty pleasure.
I don't care what anyone says about it. I love it, and the prequels are the same to me. I understand if you were born and saw the original trilogy in theaters, and then you were excited about Phantom Menace in 1999, and then you went and saw it and you got that. I get why you don't like the prequels. It makes sense to me because they are different. But I think part of us, just because they were our generation, they were our Star Wars movies, we're a little bit blinded by nostalgia, whereas things that go, things that aren't great in Revenge of the Sith, like some of the dialogue and some of the other scenes, don't bother me in the slightest because I love this movie. And I always have loved this movie. And that's an okay thing to have happen. You can like a bad movie, you can acknowledge its flaws and still go, yeah, I don't care. And that's what this is for me, because this movie does have problems, and I don't care. I don't want to sit here and just acknowledge the positives and not talk about maybe people who don't like this movie and what their problems actually are with this movie. Because, yeah, this movie has problems. Do I care? No. This is a 10 out of 10, genuinely maybe even 11 out of 10 for me. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. But this movie also suffers from the walking around in blue screens that look kind of bad and actors having to act with nothing. I think Samuel L. Jackson is the worst with it, honestly. I mean, some of his scenes with Yoda are kind of bad from Samuel L. Jackson's
There are
acting
sometimes-
performances.
I've noticed there are some times, if you see, even throughout the prequels, when they're doing that said, working with green screens, you can tell that they are not even looking at the said item that they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Well, there are times where I think it looks great, even compared to most modern day Hollywood movies. That era of like early 2000s, from like 2004 up until like, we'll say 2008.
7? Like,
Yeah, sure. We'll stay around that era. Because, we had the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and their effects still look great today. And I think it's the same company, too,
Yep.
that did the visual effects. So, but there are times when it does look a little wonky, and there are times when they look at, like, said, we'll say, like you said, Mace Windu or Sam Jackson's character looking at Yoda. There are sometimes that dude's looking, like, straight at his chest, or just looking past him.
And not only that, it's just all effects. There's no practicality happening in there to like have them touch something to make you believe that, oh, this is real right there. There's nothing. Even the way they're walking in some of the wide shots, it doesn't look like they're moving properly and I don't know. At the time in 2005, did I notice? No, but I was like 6, so I probably wouldn't have noticed. I don't know how distracting it was in theaters at the time, but watching it today, it can take you out of it a little bit because it's just such a heavy reliance on VFX. And it's my biggest issue with sometimes Marvel nowadays. You can have VFX, but just don't have your whole scene rely on the post-production and the guy who's sitting there staying up for 4 nights in a row making sure the scene looks amazing. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be done there on set that day to have some form of believability, in my opinion.
I'm very old-fashioned in the sense I prefer practical.
Yeah.
And I don't mind the mixture of the two, because I know I will give praise to the new era Star Wars, is that they found a way to balance the two of them.
They did the VFX, and then they did. They do a much better job with they just, I think George honestly had to kind of go and fail a little bit at that for everyone to understand, hey, maybe you don't do that. George was testing a lot of new things. That's my favorite part about George Lucas. He's almost an entrepreneur more than a filmmaker. Most of the time when he makes a movie, he's inventing something new to make said movie.
It's true. Outside of Star Wars alone, he was involved in Indiana Jones and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So, and a lot of those movies are pretty innovative for its time.
And so I always respect George because he goes for it. Even if it doesn't work out, he tries. And sometimes I can appreciate the try more than the actual just playing it safe. But, sometimes it does take you out of the movie. You just have to acknowledge it. 2 other really quick issues that I don't love with this movie. One of them is the Mace Windu and Ian McDiarmid fight. you can tell that they're just trying to edit around this CG Ian McDermott head that they have made. And I don't know what Ian McDermott's really doing in that scene. He's like, nah, nah, rah. Like, I don't, treason. Yeah, I don't really know what he's like. I don't know what the direction was by George. Was George like, just make funny faces? Like, I don't really get what's happening there.
I love if you ever, I gotta find a couple examples to show you, but there are so many times where you see like Ian McDermott's face when he's like,
Yeah.
like,
It's
he's like, and then Mace Windu's face is like,
yeah, really stirred. It's just like they should have just really gone with 2 stunt doubles and really just dedicated to that, because I think there's a couple shots where it is Ian McDermott and Samuel L. Jackson doing the lightsaber fighting, and you can tell that they're not putting in. Now, I don't want to say they're not putting in the effort. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen are, but at the same time, it's noticeably a very bad lightsaber battle compared to the rest of the movie.
Thankfully, it doesn't last as long, which I will say is that's really the only like real combat scene which I kind of thought was a little wonky.
I agree completely. It's the only one.
I was gonna say, then we get to the final fight at the end, the Mustafar, and then there's the one between Ian McDermott fighting Yoda.
And cutting back and forth between the two, fantastic. I think Ian McDermott and Yoda's fight, I love calling him. We call him the Emperor, Ian McDermott, or the Chancellor. It's one of the three.
I was gonna say,
they're all the same person.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they're the same guy.
But cutting back and forth between it and all the fights as they start are really good. Anakin and Obi-Wan's goes on a little long, in my opinion. When they're like swinging and like jumping off lava platforms, I'm like, all right, this could have ended a little bit ago. I'll be real.
I think that fight has. I think it's the longest recorded sword fight esque fight.
Yeah.
In movies.
I've heard that. Again, I do love it.
We'll fact check that later.
Yeah. That would be at the bottom going, Connor is right or Connor is wrong, like always. But I just think that lightsaber.
You hired me, so.
I just think that lightsaber battle goes on for slightly too long, even though I do enjoy it. And then my last negative, again, really small. For some reason, with the Grievous and Obi-Wan fight, there is just this moment George Lucas decided to zoom in on both their eyes.
I don't think so.
And it's so weird, and it's not centered at all, and it's just not good. It's just a very strange choice. And if the shot was centered, like if it zoomed in on both of his eyes and landed there, it'd be good. But like it lands like with half his nose. It's just like what happened? Was that like one take and then you were done and you just didn't cut it? Like just a very strange scene.
I wonder if it was supposed to be like one of those, like, how like those old cowboy movies or spaghetti westerns in like the 60s and 70s. They always do the close-up eye things. Maybe that's what it was inspired by, but
I think it probably was.
A second take would have been a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. It needed another like 1 or 2 more tries and just maybe watch it a couple more times in the editing room to see if it plays.
Now, this is kind of, you can edit this into the effect green screen idea. I actually remember there was a fight between Obi-Wan and Grievous. If you actually look at that fight, then when Grievous is like revealing his whole like 4-arm things, if you look closely, you can actually see Ian McGregor is not even staring at Grievous. He kind of looks like he's slightly looking off to the side a little bit. Not even at his eyes too. It's kind of like towards like if you're Grievous and I'm Ian McGregor, he's like staring off like this. He's just like, oh, I don't think so. Kenobi. I don't think so.
But did you have anything else you wanted to say about Revenge of the Sith?
May the Force be with you.
Yeah.
I will say one thing. That movie has such a nostalgic impact for me. And like you said, nostalgia can be a good thing. In this case, I have so many great stories that revolve around it. Through the games, the toys, the Lego figures. Yep. Oh, God, I have so many Lego figures back then. It's just, there's a lot I loved about it, and it's honestly the reason why I like Star Wars altogether. So I gotta say, I agree with you. It's in my mind, it is a 10 out of 10 despite its flaws. I love it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't even thinking about this, but like just what this movie does mean to me and what Star Wars means to me. I mean, I could go back and find all those videos of my brothers and I recreating scenes when we were like 7 of this movie, and they're just terrible, but they're adorable to watch and they're so fun. But I mean, this movie was nearly like just my life for a period of time when you're a kid and you get into something. I mean, I was playing the games, the Lego games, the Star Wars Battlefront 2. Oh. I was playing with the Legos, playing with the action figures, buying lightsabers. My brothers and I were all playing different characters. I mean, Star Wars is just so cool. This movie was so honestly inspiring to me to want to even try to be a filmmaker that I can't sit here and say anything else other than I love this movie. It's a 10 out of 10.
That'll do it for us. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.